Hey everyone, welcome back to the desk. If you've ever found yourself staring at a blinking cursor on a blank screen, knowing exactly what you want to say but feeling an invisible wall blocking you from typing a single word, you know exactly what today's episode is about. You're listening to The Gap to Create, weaving the news into yarn. Today we are pulling back the curtain on a very modern kind of exhaustion, algorithmic fatigue. It's that crushing weight where your entire waking life is consumed by the hustle of performative output, transforming a creative passion into a relentless digital treadmill. But this isn't just a story about hitting a wall. It's about how stepping away from the screen and into a highly structured, tactile and, let's be honest, delightfully silly hobby can completely reboot a fried brain. To help me unpack the anatomy of creative burnout and explain how a local evening news broadcast became my ultimate analog sanctuary, I'm handing the microphone over to Dean and Diana for the deep dive. Take it away, guys.
Have you ever just sat staring at a blinking cursor on a blank screen?
Oh, absolutely. The worst feeling.
Right. Like, you know absolutely what you want to say. You can feel the ideas sort of swirling around in your head.
Yeah, but there's just this invisible wall.
Exactly. An impenetrable wall blocking you from typing a single word. And, I mean, you aren't lacking inspiration. You aren't out of ideas. But the connection between your brain and the page is just, well, it's completely severed.
And that is not just your everyday writer's block.
No, not at all. That is the crushing weight of algorithmic fatigue. And when your internal battery is just destroyed by that level of information overload, you can't simply take a walk around the block to fix it.
Right, or drink a glass of water. Those standard pieces of self-care advice, they usually fall completely flat when you're dealing with modern digital burnout.
Yeah, they really do.
I mean, we are living in an era where the demand for constant performative output creates a very specific type of exhaustion. The human nervous system simply was not built to operate as an endless content-generating machine.
No, it really wasn't. Which brings us to the incredibly relatable, highly specific, and honestly, brilliant solution we're exploring today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one. It's a great topic.
Today we're looking at a deeply personal journey, detailed in The Gap to Create. And for those who don't know, that's a spin-off space from the Corner Coffee with Cricket podcast.
Yeah, it's a space designed to give complex stories the breathing room they actually deserve.
Exactly. And our mission today is to really pull apart the anatomy of creative burnout. We want to understand why stepping away from the endless digital hustle into a highly structured, tactile, and delightfully silly hobby is exactly what a fried brain needs to reset.
It sounds counterintuitive, but it's brilliant.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the person at the center of this story, they're not someone who is failing at the digital game. By all outward metrics, they were totally thriving.
Thriving, yeah, but carrying an immense, completely unsustainable load. I mean, we're looking at a multi-hyphenate creator here.
Oh, yeah, like juggling so many hats.
Right. This is someone juggling the roles of a writer, a blogger, a podcaster, and a vlogger.
Which is exhausting, just to say out loud.
Exactly. Maintaining relevance in just one of those mediums requires a significant amount of daily energy, attempting to balance all four. That means your entire waking life is just consumed by the hustle of production.
And the scale of their success is actually staggering. Like, the text points out that their podcast sits in the top 3.5% globally.
That's huge.
It is. But achieving that level of reach requires an audience that expects absolute consistency. If you vanish for a week, the algorithm just buries you.
It's ruthless.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that pressure leads to some extreme behavior. The source highlights this specific intense sprint in early April, where they went on a massive writing tear. They churned out 10 separate blogs in just 8 days.
10 blogs in 8 days. I mean, the deceptive thing about a sprint like that is how it actually feels in the moment.
Oh, it probably felt amazing at first.
Right, because when you're rapidly checking tasks off a list and you're watching the word count climb, you experience this massive surge of productivity-induced adrenaline.
Yeah, it feels like a triumph.
It does. But that adrenaline, it essentially serves as a painkiller. It masks the severe toll the pace is taking on your cognitive reserves. That intense burst completely hollowed out their creative process.
It makes me think of like running a marathon at a sprinter's pace, or taking a high-performance sports car and permanently keeping the tachometer buried in the red zone.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. Because if you treat your creative battery like a machine with an infinite gas tank, and you force an engine to run at maximum RPMs indefinitely, you don't just run out of gas.
No, the friction builds up.
Exactly. The heat becomes trapped in the engine block, and eventually, the internal metal components literally begin to warp. The engine just completely seizes up. You destroy the machinery by demanding it operate beyond its physical limits.
And that mechanical failure is a highly accurate way to view what happened to their creative drive. And the underlying cause of that failure, well, it's fascinating based on the text.
Yeah.
Because the struggle wasn't about a lack of passion for their subject matter. They were pushing incredibly hard to increase readership and grow this already highly ranked podcast. But the operative phrase they use to describe the process is forcing it daily.
Oof. Forcing it daily. That sounds miserable.
It is. They were running themselves ragged simply to ensure they were seen, heard, and keeping pace with the demands of the algorithm.
That feels like the ultimate modern trap. You transition from, creating because you have a unique perspective to share, to create because a line of code requires a daily sacrifice just to keep your visibility score high.
Yes. The psychology of motivation shifts entirely when that happens. You move from intrinsic motivation, doing something because it brings you joy or fulfillment, to extrinsic motivation,
where your actions are entirely dictated by external rewards or punishments.
Exactly. And genuine insight and nuanced creativity, they just can't be mass-produced on a factory line. Valuing algorithmic visibility over actual inspiration, it fundamentally breaks the creative spirit.
And the resulting disconnect is terrifying, especially for someone whose entire livelihood and identity are wrapped up in being a communicator.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, they could see the projects they wanted to execute, they felt the desire to do them, but the physical act of translating those thoughts into words just became an absolute struggle. The bridge was just gone.
And staring harder at the screen and demanding the words to appear obviously doesn't rebuild that bridge.
No. When the digital engine seizes up, you can't fix it by pressing the gas harder.
You have to change vehicles entirely.
Right, which means leaving the digital space altogether. And in the midst of this profound exhaustion, they retreated to an analog sanctuary.
They turned to yarn.
Yes, knitting and crocheting. But, and I think this is crucial, this wasn't some random hobby picked up on a whim from a craft store to pass the time. His specific sanctuary carries massive historical and emotional weight for them.
The depth of comfort anchored in that yarn is incredibly profound. During a previous battle with cancer, picking up a yarn project served as their definitive safe place.
Wow.
Yeah. This is a tactile medium that has literally sustained them through life-threatening trauma and extreme physical hardship.
That detail really elevates the whole concept of a hobby for me. Their yarn baskets aren't just storage containers, they're living archives.
It holds so much history.
They really do. Those baskets hold old pattern tests, half-finished ideas, and incredibly, a very special project created alongside their late husband, Phil. There's a deep textured history resting in that physical space.
And alongside that emotional history, they operate with a very defined artistic philosophy.
Right, they have a very specific style.
Yeah, they gravitate toward rich, complex textures and vibrant colors. But the most crucial element of their philosophy is a strict, unbreakable rule. Every single piece they create must be a one-off.
Meaning they never make the same thing twice.
Exactly. They never design or execute a project the same way twice. Complete uniqueness is the mandate.
Okay, I want to pause on the mechanics of this for a second. Let's ask the question, why? We have a brain completely shattered by the demands of digital creation. Why does returning to a repetitive, tactile, analog task like knitting actually help when the brain is completely fried by digital demands?
Well, the contrast between the two environments provides the answer. Think about the digital space that caused the burnout.
It's endless.
Right. It's infinite, instantaneous, and highly performative. Every podcast or blog post is pushed out into an endless void, judged by unseen metrics, and then immediately buried by the next piece of content.
It's a treadmill that never stops.
Exactly. But the physical world of yarn is the exact opposite. It is finite, slow, and exists entirely in the physical space of the maker.
So the digital world demanded endless performative content for an audience, while the analog world feels deeply private. It's a low-stakes space for singular creations.
Furthermore, the repetitive, rhythmic, physical motion of knitting, like the continuous looping and pulling of the yarn, it actually has a documented grounding effect on the human nervous system.
Really? That makes so much sense.
Yeah, it forces the brain to focus on the immediate, tangible present. And because of their one-off rule, they are engaging in a process of singular discovery rather than mass production. It provided a space to rest and rebuild without the crushing pressure of being seen or heard.
It is a return to creating purely for the sake of the physical object itself.
Just for the joy of it.
Yeah. And this safe, quiet retreat was exactly what was needed. But, it could have easily remained just a quiet hobby. However, it collided with the creator's everyday life to spark an entirely new, highly structured obsession.
And the transition from passive rest to active, joyful engagement is often triggered by the most unexpected catalysts.
It really is. The turning point starts with a casual conversation. They have a good mate who happens to be a well-known local evening news anchor.
A very specific connection, yeah.
Right. And during a chat, a joke is made. It is a moment of pure, lighthearted silliness. They joke that it would be incredibly fun to track the specific color of the anchor's neckties every single night on the broadcast, and then use that daily data to design a knitted blanket.
Now, under normal circumstances, a passing comment like that yields a quick laugh and is immediately forgotten.
Right, you just chuckle and move on. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Instead of forgetting it, it instantly morphs into a real daily mission.
The irony here is so brilliant.
It is. The exhausted creator who just fled the internet because they were utterly sick of screens and the pressure of logging on suddenly transforms into what they describe as a digital researcher.
They're back on the computer.
Exactly. They begin eagerly logging on to their computer every single evening, strictly to check the local newsfeed, determine this anchor's tie color, and match the corresponding yarn for the next rows of the blanket. So they fled the digital world because they were burned out on screens, only to end up logging on every single night anyway.
The physical action of logging on is the same, but the psychological motivation is entirely inverted. We need to unpack that phrase, lighthearted silliness, from the source.
Yeah, that seems like the key to the whole thing.
It is the linchpin of their recovery. The creator didn't force a grand return to writing or content creation. They simply followed a fun, unpredictable idea. By stripping away all professional stakes, the natural joy of discovery was permitted to re-enter their routine.
So the motivation shifted from a desperate need to output to a curious, playful desire to input.
Exactly.
They weren't logging on to check their global podcast ranking or monitor audience engagement metrics. They were logging on to answer one absurd low-stakes question. What color is the tie tonight?
And that removes the threat from the digital space. It becomes a tool for an internal, personal game rather than an arena where their professional worth is constantly judged.
But simply matching tie colors day by day wasn't enough, right? Once the pressure was completely removed, their brain fired back up. They took this simple color matching joke and evolved it into an astonishingly complex system of data visualization.
The evolution from a digital researcher into a mathematician really highlights how quickly the mind can recover its capacity for complex thought when the environment is safe.
Let's break down the specific evolving rules they established for this blanket, because they are intricate.
Yes, let's get into the math of it.
First, they lay down a foundation. A standard navy blue yarn serves as the base of the entire blanket. And this was specifically chosen because it mirrors the standard navy blue suit that visually anchors the evening news broadcast.
So the physical aesthetic is immediately tied to the reality of the television screen. It grounds the playful concept in a very specific visual reality.
Exactly. Then the mathematics kick in. They don't just knit a standard uniform number of rows for each day. The number of rows knitted is dictated entirely by the length of the anchor's on-air time slot.
Which is brilliant.
It is. And because local news schedules are not static-like, they shift dynamically between weekdays and weekends. The daily row counts are constantly changing. This introduces a beautifully unpredictable, shifting rhythm into the physical structure of the blanket.
The physical dimensions of the artwork become a literal timeline. It expands and contracts based on the actual passage of time on the broadcast.
And the system evolves even further to represent the whole broadcast family. The main anchor is a gentleman named Will. But, television is unpredictable. When Will is out and a substitute anchor named Beth fills in at the desk, the tracking doesn't pause.
They adapt the rules.
Right. Instead, they introduce an entirely different stitch pattern, specifically to mark Beth's presence in those exact rows. And on the weekends, when a co-anchor named Alice shares the desk, specific colors are introduced into the pattern just for her.
They built a living, tactile database that records the daily operational reality of a local news station. It's amazing.
But wait, I have to challenge the premise here. Let's look at this objectively from the outside.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
We have a person whose cognitive abilities were shattered by the relentless pressure of algorithms, daily tracking, and rigid digital rules. So, to cure that exhaustion, they retreat to a safe space, only to immediately invent a system of strict daily tracking, complex mathematical row counts tied to shifting television time slots, dedicated color changes for weekend hosts, and entirely new stitch variations for substitute anchors.
I see where you're going with this.
Right, because from a distance, that sounds incredibly complicated. Why would introducing strict math and complex rules cure mental exhaustion rather than causing more of it? Isn't this just replacing one demanding job with another?
That is a great question. And the fundamental difference lies in the source of the authority. Think back to the source text description of the project as a playful mathematical puzzle. The algorithm represents an external, unfeeling authority. It demands continuous production on its own schedule, and if you fail to comply, you lose your audience and your livelihood.
It's like a hostage situation for your creativity.
Exactly. And the brain processes that kind of external demand as a chronic threat, which leads to the exhaustion. But the rules governing the blanket are entirely self-imposed.
Ah, so it's about control.
Yes. When you invent your own complex constraints for the sheer sake of a game, you are the ultimate authority. The cognitive load is processed entirely differently. The brain doesn't view self-imposed rules as a threat. It views them as a puzzle. Structure and rules are not inherently exhausting. They are only exhausting when forced by external pressures.
So when self-imposed for fun, these rules act as a framework that allows the mind to play.
Exactly. In fact, human cognition often craves patterns, systems, and organization. The motivation changes the chemistry of the work. They are tracking shifting time slots not for survival, but to solve a beautiful, evolving puzzle of their own making.
This perfectly demonstrates that creativity doesn't just survive when constrained by rules. It often flourishes.
Yes, the self-imposed framework gives the mind a playground. The result is what the creator beautifully refers to as a living, textured record of the news team.
I love that phrase. Calling it a living, textured record really elevates the entire concept. It proves that engaging constraints can breed incredible art. It isn't just a quirky fan project. It is the physical manifestation of data, woven together by rules designed entirely for the joy of play.
And ultimately, it served its primary function. The journey through this mathematical puzzle became the exact remedy needed to recharge their completely depleted creative reserves.
Let's bring this all back and look at the incredible arc we've traced through this deep dive. We started with a creatively bankrupt blogger and podcaster, right? Someone whose internal engine had completely seized.
They were running on fumes, completely hollowed out by the relentless sprint to feed an algorithm.
Exactly. A state of total depletion. From there, they stepped away from the screens and retreated into the historical, tactile safety of their yarn baskets. A space holding memories of resilience, of their late husband, and survival.
And in that safe harbor, they transformed into a mathematician knitter.
They did. They found a way to take the mundane daily rhythm of the local evening news and turn it into a complex, evolving, textured piece of art, recharging their battery through play.
The overarching lesson here, the ultimate takeaway from the creator, is about embracing that lighthearted silliness. When your spark is gone, attempting to force the words or demand brilliant production from yourself is entirely counterproductive.
You just dig a deeper hole.
Exactly. Sometimes to find your spark again, you have to stop forcing the words and simply allow yourself to follow an unpredictable, silly, fun idea wherever it leads.
You have to step out of the algorithm and ground yourself in the analog, which leaves us with a truly fascinating, kind of provocative concept to ponder on our own.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Think about it. This person built a complex, living record out of something as completely ordinary as a friend's daily work wardrobe on a local television broadcast. It really forces you to look at your daily environment through a different lens.
It does. Inspiration is rarely waiting in profound, earth-shattering moments. More often, the most engaging frameworks are hiding in the repetitive, easily ignored data of our daily routines.
So as you go through your week, I want you to actively look for those hidden frameworks. What everyday mundane rhythm in your own life could you use to build a playground for your mind?
There are so many possibilities when you start looking.
Right. Think about the specific color of the cars passing by your window at exactly 5:00 p.m. Think about the varying length of your daily commute measured down to the minute. Consider the changing shapes of the shadows on your living room wall as the sun sets.
What set of entirely ordinary occurrences could you use to invent your own rules?
Exactly. What framework could you build uniquely for yourself, just for the absolute joy of play? The goal is to find the joy in the data, entirely divorced from the pressure of any professional outcome.
Find a way to build something uniquely yours, just for the sake of play.
Because when the crushing weight of information overload leaves your internal battery flashing red, you cannot just plug yourself into a wall socket and expect to be fine. You have to actively build your own safe place, invent your own absurd, beautiful rules, and plug yourself back into the power of play. Remind yourself to find your own safe place to recharge.
And that is the power of reclaiming your own creative boundaries. What started as a light-hearted joke about tracking anchor tie colors completely inverted the pressure. By building my own complex, self-imposed rules purely for the sake of a game, the digital threat evaporated, leaving behind a safe playground for the mind. As I look down at this blanket, it really has become a living, textured record of the news team. A physical manifestation of data woven together simply for the joy of play. My decks are officially cleared, the storm is rolling in outside, and I've got just enough time to plug back into the power of play and knit a few rows of this fresh baby pink yarn before Will McDonald takes over the anchor desk at 4 p.m. I'm grabbing a fresh cup of coffee, along with my notebook to check the color of Will's tie for today. Stay safe out there. Keep the coffee cups full and I will see you soon.